That's really exciting. And that is actually what I'm hearing again and again from
Mhm.
several channelers. Now, have Bashar said anything about how that will look like? Because I assume the reason it hasn't happened yet is because we haven't been ready and there has been a lot of fear around this. So,
Yeah.
how will it look like?
Well, it could look many ways. I mean, one thing he has recently said is, we may start seeing more ships more blatantly. They may actually sort of put themselves in certain positions and hold themselves there so we get used to the idea. Like they might appear over the ocean. So, they're not over our heads, but we can stand on the shore and we can see them. That might be one way, and they might just stay there for quite some time so that we just get used to the idea that they're here without necessarily directly interacting. But then eventually, I think, they will come down, they will introduce themselves, or they will be introduced. Part of the thing I think that people are not really aware of is that on a certain small level, contact has already happened. And there are certain things that have been going on behind the scenes with certain limited government institutions where they've already been creating preparation for this. And therefore, by the time they're introduced to us, the ETs, sort of they will already have been interacting with us to a certain degree. And so the agencies that can say, yes, they've been here, we've been working together on certain things, they're peaceful, they're benign, they're here for our benefit, will be able to explain that since they've been here already for quite some time, there's really nothing to be afraid of, and that they can, be introduced to society in a way that we can handle, probably in stages, probably steps at a time, to get us again used to the idea that these beings do exist. Now, when we talk about the idea of open contact, ironically, we're really only talking about something that's new to what you might call general Western society, because a lot of indigenous cultures, American Indians and so on and so forth, have known for thousands of years that these beings have existed. They've had contact with these beings off and on for thousands of years. To them, their ancestors from the stars have always been around. So when we talk about open contact, we're not necessarily talking about something that's new for every culture on the planet. We're talking about something that's new for the Western cultures on the planet, because we haven't necessarily allowed ourselves to be aware completely in the same way these indigenous cultures have, that these beings have been around for quite some time. But one of the things that you talked about history at the beginning, one of the gifts that I've been told they will be giving us when we have open contact is holographic representations of our complete history, going back thousands of years. So we will be able to fill in the gaps of what's missing and understand where we came from and therefore where we're going. So I'm very excited about that. They would literally be able to show us holographic representations of Atlantis, of dinosaurs, of all these things that we have been investigating and speculating about for so long. And they actually have recordings of these things that they will give us. So that'll be
Oh
exciting.
my, oh my. This is just getting more and more exciting. And
Yeah.
even in our lifetime, that's what you're saying, our lifetime.
My understanding, and this comes not only from Bashar, but from a couple of other very well-known and pretty strong psychics, is that we're going to have open contact and start being introduced to these beings within the next 5 years at the outside. It's
Wow.
imminent. It's imminent. We're right on the cusp.
Now, during the times of Egypt, where they were on its, what do you say, when they built or the pyramids were built, it seemed like they had help, because all of a sudden that civilization was super intelligent and created all these
Yeah,
amazing buildings. Now, is that what happened, that they got help from extraterrestrials, and is
I
that going to happen now?
I
Because
think, yeah, I think longer ago there was extraterrestrial technologies that were shared, but probably shared more with the culture in Atlantis. And when Atlantis was destroyed, the survivors went into the Mediterranean, as well as other places, the Americas, and so on and so forth, and brought that knowledge and technology with them. So it's probably that the technology was handed down from extraterrestrials to advanced cultures like Atlantis, and Atlantis brought it into Egypt and the Central and South American areas, where all of a sudden, yes, these gigantic pyramids were being built for a variety of reasons. So yeah, by proxy, I think it's ET technology, but I think it came through some of the more advanced cultures like Atlantis that existed at the time, and they're the ones who taught those other cultures like the Egyptians and Central American indigenous natives how to do those kinds of things. There might have been still ongoing, intermittent communication with ETs at the time, but I think by the time Atlantis was destroyed, the survivors brought that information with them that they had learned probably from ETs or other methods from so long ago, even before the destruction.
And Bashar, I have to ask, has he shown himself to you how he looks like? Because
yes, I know what he looks like well, like I said, when I first made the telepathic connection with him, I could see what he looks like. He's a hybrid being, similar to humans, but very pale, very slight, smaller, slightly smaller than we are, about 5 feet tall. No hair on the males, hair on the females, tends to be white on the females. Their eyes are much larger than ours. Mouths, nose, and ears are much smaller. Heads are a little bit larger than what we're used to, but kind of very thin, very slight. It's the eyes that really stand out. Skin is very pale, almost like paper. So yeah, I've seen him in dream connections, dream contacts, about 4 or 5 times. And I know that it's different than a normal dream, because the only thing that's happening is I'm actually just talking to him and he's talking to me during the entire course of the dream. Like we're literally having a conversation like I'm having with you. So those are very different than a regular dream. So I've seen him in that context. We depicted what he looks like in the documentary that we did called First Contact, that's available for people to watch. So they can get to see, because we recreated with computer graphics, the ideas of the sightings I saw of his ship, what his ship looks like inside and out, what he looks like, what his civilization looks like, his planet looks like. All of that exists in depictions in the First Contact documentary that we created several years ago.
so he is not a gray, but he looks a bit
No.
like them.
It's a combination of the Greys and Earth humans. That's what we're referring to as hybrid. So it's like 50-50 between the Greys and a typical Earth human. So yeah.
Some are speaking of these cycles, like a 26,000 year cycle, where humanity goes through these phases of a golden age and then a downfall and a golden age. And I'm curious, is that what's happening? We're moving towards the golden age and then we do the same thing again?
Well, no, I think it's different now. I mean, yes, we're at the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. But I think it's a little different now because we're elevating to a certain point. And according to Bashar, eventually we will simply evolve beyond needing to incarnate on the earth now and leave the earth to other beings to use it as their school, so to speak, their experience. And, we can still function in spirit as guides for them. But, this may take place in, 1,000 years, whatever, 2,000 years. But I think we're sort of, by choice, coming together to be able to sort of finish this story of the evolution of humanity. Because according to Bashar, now with the introduction of the hybrids that will eventually be coming to live among us, we're evolving into what he calls the 6th hybrid race. And eventually that will allow us to blend with the other hybrids and become the 7th hybrid race, which will usher in, according to him, 100,000 years of peace in the galaxy. So, this seems to be a slightly different story, ending to a story that's been going on for a long, long time. So I think we're sort of in that end process, that end cycle for that. And then we'll move on, and other beings can come and utilize the planet in ways that they need to experience incarnations and tell their stories. So we'll see, but that's quite a ways away.
Wow. Are we all into this project, or are there other forces who will not evolve in the same way?
Yeah, we still have free will. So, a lot of people will be involved in this, but a lot of people may choose not to be. They may go their own way. They may experience other kinds of things. Remember, Bashar has sort of said, all parallel versions of Earth all exist at the same time. And you never change the planet you're on, you change yourself, and you constantly shift to different versions of Earth that are more reflective of the change in your own frequency. So some people may go the way of contact, some people may not go the way of contact, and they may continue to experience things that allow them to process whatever they need to process, while other people may go into shifting into other versions of Earth that will allow them to experience what they prefer. So we still all have free will, and we can decide, whether we want to go with positive or negative, love or fear, and that will navigate us through the different versions of parallel reality Earths that are reflective of whatever it is we feel we would like to still experience or continue to experience.
Yeah, from what I understand, Bashar speaks about that we're in a simulation. And many channelers are speaking about that we create our own reality, and that we're in our own reality. And I'm curious how, in a way, concrete that is, how literally they mean that.
They mean it very literally. In other words, you and I right now are communicating through a device. You're not seeing me directly. You're seeing an electronic recreation of my image, right?
True.
Okay. So Bashar is saying reality is kind of like that. Everyone in your reality, they're real beings, but you're creating your simulation of them in your energy, in your reality, by agreement to interact with them. So we're creating interfaces for each other to interact with, just like this is an interface for you and I to interact. We're not seeing each other directly. We're seeing our representational interfaces made out of this electronic medium. So physical reality is literally like that. You are in your own reality, but you're aware on a higher level there are other beings, and based on the agreements you make with those other beings collectively, you create your version of them in your reality out of your own consciousness, so you have something representative to interact with. The ones that you don't make agreements with are still around, they're still here, everything is here, but you don't see them. They're in different realities because they're in different frequencies based on not having made an agreement to interact with them. Now, because we're expanding our consciousness, we're broadening our bandwidth, so to speak, people are starting to see things beyond what the normal consensus originally agreed to see. So people are starting to see spirits, people are starting to see more UFOs, things that exist in parallel realities of different frequencies. But because our consciousness is expanding, our senses are sharpening and being able to reach into those and create simulations of those things, because now we accept that those things might exist. We've made an agreement to start experiencing those through the representations we're creating in our own realities. So, yeah.
Wow.
Like that.
I don't feel like I'm getting it, but maybe I'm not supposed to.
No, it's not that complex. You'll get it. But again, like I said, this is a perfect analogy right now. You are not seeing me. I exist and you exist, but what we're seeing is a representation of each other out on this electronic screen.
And in my reality now, I'm speaking with you, but you're speaking with me in your reality.
Right.
But that's your reality. So they're two different realities?
They are two different realities that
Mm.
are extremely similar because we have agreed to
Mm.
communicate. And
Okay.
therefore, they have to be similar enough for us to understand each other.
Huh.
So, but my version of you may not be anyone else's version of you. There may be slight differences. They might not be very noticeable because they're so slight, but they are slightly different. And your version of me is probably slightly different than anyone else's, even though it may not be very noticeable.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's just that it's so minimal in terms of what we've agreed to experience that you can't necessarily tell that I'm not in the same reality that you are.